White woman stole. Black CEO's seat then freezes as the $22 billion jet calls her name. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story. That seat is reserved for VIPs, not service staff. The words tore through the quiet like glass shattering on marble. Every head in the private jet lounge turned. Cameras lifted. Eyes narrowed. The kind of silence that follows humiliation filled the air, sharp, heavy, and public. Amara Lewis didn't move. She sat exactly where she was, one hand resting on her laptop, the other calm on her knee. Her hoodie was soft gray, her jeans plain, her posture steady. To the woman standing over her pearl earrings, designer trench, righteous fury, she looked like someone out of place, a mistake in a perfect room. But she wasn't. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change. And we're glad you're here. Now, back to Amara Lewis. Margaret's finger hovered inches from Amara's face, trembling with entitlement. I said move, that seat's for VIP clients, not whatever you are. The phrase landed like a slap disguised as manners. A man in a navy suit behind her smirked. Another whispered, some people just don't know their place. The lounge was a temple of quiet luxury floor-to-ceiling, glass, champagne carts, flight crews passing in polished silence. Outside, a sleek jet gleamed in the sunlight, its tail logo unreadable from here. Inside, tension coiled tighter with every second Amara stayed seated. She blinked once, slow and measured. Her gaze lifted, meeting Margaret's without flinching. Is that what you think? She asked softly. Margaret scoffed, voice rising so the whole room could hear. It's not what I think, it's what everyone sees. Someone at the espresso bar chuckled nervously. A young attendant froze mid-step, clutching a tablet. Security shifted near the door, uncertain whether to intervene. Still, Amara didn't move. Her stillness wasn't submission, it was calculation. She'd seen this scene before. Different airports, different faces, same energy. Margaret adjusted her scarf, mistaking silence for weakness. Security's coming. You'll be escorted out. A beat passed. The sound of jet engines hummed faintly beyond the window. Amara closed her laptop gently, a sound so soft, it somehow cut louder than the shouting. Make sure you know who you're escorting, she said quietly. But no one listened. Not yet. The camera would linger here on Margaret's pointed finger, on Amara's unshaken gaze, on the mirrored reflection of a jet worth more than every voice in that room combined. The insult had been delivered. The reckoning was already taxiing in. The lounge slowly recovered from the echo of Margaret's voice, but the tension never left. Amara Lewis sat back, eyes steady on the runway. The private jet outside shimmered in sunlight, a silver blade against the blue. People around her whispered, the kind of murmurs that sound polite but cut deep. She's just sitting there, probably a cleaner who got lost. Look at her laptop acting like she's got business here. Every word floated toward her like dust in the air, visible, harmless, yet suffocating. Amara didn't respond. She simply adjusted her hoodie, placed one hand over the closed laptop, and breathed slow. She wasn't here to prove herself. She was here to observe. Today was a test not for her, but for them. The staff hadn't recognized her face deliberately so. When you build a company worth billions, anonymity becomes a tool sharper than any press release. She'd flown in alone, no assistants, no badge, no designer armor, just the quiet confidence of someone who didn't need to announce her worth. Across the room, the lounge manager, a tall man with a laminated smile, approached Margaret. Apologies for the disturbance, ma'am, we'll handle it. He turned toward Amara with the look of a man trained to smile and discriminate at the same time. Miss, may I ask what department you're with? Department? Amara echoed, her tone flat. He gestured toward her hoodie. Housekeeping, catering, maintenance, whichever one it is, this section's reserved. The woman with the pearls folded her arms, triumphant. I told you. They let anyone in these days. A faint laugh rippled through the room, the kind that wears civility like perfume. Amara met the manager's eyes. I'm not with any department. she said quietly. He smiled, not listening already, preparing the next insult. Well, ma'am, I'll have to ask you to... Before he could finish, the young attendant from earlier, Emma, stepped closer. Her voice was small but clear. Sir, I think she's on the manifest. The manager frowned. That's impossible. Those names are private. Emma hesitated. I saw it when I printed the schedule. Flight Lewis, 2. The manager waved her off like a fly. You're mistaken. Go back to the counter. Emma's lips parted as if to protest, but she stopped. Her eyes found Amara's, an unspoken apology flickering there. Amara gave a slight nod, no blame, no fear, just quiet understanding. Margaret clapped her hands once, sharp. Are we done? I have an important meeting, and this, she motioned to Amara, is ruining the view. The manager straightened, eager to please. Security is on the way, ma'am. Outside, the jet's door opened. A staircase lowered, slow and deliberate. Like a curtain rising on a play none of them realized they were in. Amara glanced at it once, then back at the people still lecturing her. Her voice was calm enough to sound like warning. Maybe you should wait before you make your next assumption. But they didn't wait. They never do. And in less than 5 minutes, every rule of that lounge, every smug whisper, every pointed finger would come undone. The clock above the espresso bar ticked past noon. Outside, sunlight poured through the glass wall, washing everything in sterile luxury white marble, chrome, glass, and judgment. Inside, the air had turned brittle. The lounge manager returned, this time with 2 security officers in Navy uniforms. They walked like people sure they'd never be wrong. Miss, one said, hand hovering near his badge, we're going to need you to stand and come with us. Amara didn't move. She tilted her head slightly, as if considering whether the request deserved oxygen. I haven't done anything wrong, she said. That's for management to decide. The manager, proud now, folded his arms. You're creating discomfort among our VIP guests. Margaret smirked, crossing her legs elegantly. She's creating discomfort just by sitting there. The words earned a few quiet laughs, brittle, nervous, complicit. Emma, the young attendant, froze near the counter. Her knuckles tightened around her tablet. She glanced at the jet manifest again, heart racing. The name A. Lewis still glowed on the screen. She looked up. Nobody else seemed to care. Ma'am, the second officer said, firmer now. You can cooperate or we can escort you out. Amara's calm didn't break. Escort me where? Outside. This lounge is for clients only. The room hushed. That word clients hung in the air like smoke. The couple on the sofa whispered, she's not one of them. Someone near the window muttered, probably trying to sneak a photo with the jets. Amara closed her eyes for half a breath, and suddenly, a memory flickered 20 years earlier, a hotel in Charlotte. She was 16, dressed in her Sunday best, waiting in a lobby for her parents. A clerk walked up and said, this area is for guests only. He never asked who she was. He just saw what she wasn't. That same chill brushed her spine, now colder, but familiar. She opened her eyes. Do you treat everyone like this? She asked quietly. Or only the ones who don't fit your picture of wealth? The manager stiffened. Excuse me? Margaret scoffed. Oh, please, stop making this about race. This is about standards. Exactly, the manager added quickly, grateful for the lifeline. We maintain an image here. Amara's voice cut cleanly through the air. And you think that image is threatened by me? No one answered. Somewhere, a phone camera clicked discreet, shaky, recording truth disguised as gossip. Emma stepped forward again. Sir, please. Not another word, Emma, the manager snapped. You're on probation as it is. Amara's gaze shifted to the young woman, then back to the men in uniform. She rose slowly, not defiant, just deliberate. Her movement quieted the room more than shouting ever could. If you're going to remove me, she said softly, make sure you understand who you're removing. The security guard frowned. And who would that be? Amara met his eyes, unwavering. You'll find out soon enough. Margaret laughed, sharp and hollow. Oh, this is rich. The manager turned to the guards. Do it. Escort her out. They stepped closer, and at that exact moment, a voice echoed from the speaker system above. Final call for passenger Amara Lewis. Flight Lewis 22 boarding now. Every face turned toward the glass. Outside, the jet's engines hummed to life. And inside, for the first time all morning, silence meant something else. Not power, not arrogance, but fear. The name hung in the air like a spark over fuel. Amara Lewis. Flight Lewis, 22. Margaret blinked first, her smirk faltering. That can't be right. The manager's eyes darted to the glass wall, to the jet beyond, to the passengers inside the lounge now staring back at him. But Amara didn't move. She just looked at her watch. Calm, precise, almost merciful. Outside, ground staff rolled the staircase into place, polished chrome catching sunlight like a mirror of truth. Emma took one hesitant step forward. Her heart hammered, but her voice was steady. "Sir," she said quietly, "I told you she was on the manifest." The manager turned sharply. "Emma, that's enough." His tone cracked under the weight of eyes watching him. "She's not cleared for that flight. The system must have glitched." "No," Emma whispered, louder now. "It didn't. I printed the schedule myself." She lifted the tablet, the screen trembling in her hands. "It says owner right next to her name." A murmur rolled through the lounge. Phones rose higher, capturing the moment like courtroom evidence. Margaret's husband leaned forward, whispering, "Owner? Of what?" Amara finally stood, her chair sliding back with the soft scrape of consequence. "Of the jet outside," she said. The sentence was simple, no drama, no emphasis, but it cracked through the room like thunder behind glass. The security officers froze mid-step. Emma's eyes widened with relief and disbelief all at once. The manager's face drained of color. Margaret laughed, desperate, defensive. "You expect us to believe that? Dress like that? Please." Amara turned to her. "You made an assumption. You confused quiet for lesser." She paused, gaze unwavering. "That's your mistake, not mine." Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She didn't check it. She didn't need to. Everything was already in motion. The manager scrambled for composure. "Look, Miss Lewis, if there's been a misunderstanding, we can—" "There was no misunderstanding," Amara interrupted, voice level. "There was profiling. There was arrogance. There was a room full of people who thought silence meant permission." Emma swallowed hard, the truth too heavy to stay quiet anymore. "She told you," she said, voice shaking but firm. "You just didn't want to hear her." Margaret turned toward the young attendant, eyes cold. "You should learn when to stay in your place." Emma took a step forward. "If staying in my place means watching this happen, then maybe I don't want that place." The room shifted, a visible fracture between those who looked away and those who finally looked up. Amara's gaze softened on the girl. "Thank you," she said simply. "You saw what mattered." She picked up her laptop, tucked it under one arm, and faced the guards still standing frozen. "You can stand down now," she said. "Your job's done." The older guard hesitated. "Ma'am, we didn't know." "You didn't ask," Amara replied. The jet's engines roared louder outside, a steady heartbeat of power. For the first time, the sound didn't belong to background noise. It belonged to her. As she turned toward the glass doors, Margaret's voice cracked behind her. You set us up." "Oh." Amara paused. Her reflection in the window stared back, calm and absolute. "No," she said. "I gave you the chance to show who you were." And without raising her voice, she walked toward the jet that bore her name, leaving behind a room full of people who finally understood the cost of silence. The automatic doors slid open, and warm air swept in from the runway. Engines pulsed in the distance, low, steady, like a heartbeat under steel. But behind her, the room wasn't done. "Stop her," Margaret shouted, her voice breaking through panic and pride. The manager turned, half out of duty, half out of fear. "Ma'am, wait, we just need verification." Amara stopped mid-stride, the sunlight catching her profile in gold. Verification. That word again, the corporate disguise for disbelief. She'd heard it her entire life. At banks, at hotels, at boardrooms she owned. The tone was always the same. Prove that you belong. She turned back toward them, quiet but commanding. "Verification?" she echoed. "Of what?" The older guard shifted uncomfortably. "Your authorization, ma'am. Just procedure." "Procedure," she repeated, her eyes cold but steady. "Or prejudice?" No one answered. Even the coffee machine behind the counter hissed and went silent, like it understood the weight in the air. Then Margaret stepped forward again, her composure unraveling into anger. "You're not fooling anyone. You probably printed that name yourself." She pointed at Emma. "And you'll lose your job for lying." Emma flinched but stood her ground. "I'm not lying. You're just a trainee," Margaret spat. You don't even know how these systems work." The manager tried to intervene, voice trembling. Let's all stay calm." Amara took a slow breath. "I am calm," she said. And that calm, deliberate, unbothered carried more threat than any scream. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. One tap. One call. "Carla," she said softly, "we've reached phase 2. A pause. Then a woman's voice through the speaker, crisp, confident. "Confirmed, ma'am. Protocol 22 initiated. The lounge feed is live." Margaret blinked. "What feed?" Amara tilted her head slightly. "The one recording every word you've said for the past 10 minutes. Gasps fluttered around the room. The manager's face went pale. You can't just—" "I can," Amara said evenly. "And I did." Emma's eyes widened. "You planned this?" Amara's voice softened. "No, I prepared for it." Outside, a gust of wind rolled across the tarmac, pushing sunlight into the room. It felt like the weather itself had chosen a side. Margaret's hands trembled now, but her voice still tried to sound superior. "You set us up. You came here dressed like this just to humiliate us." Amara's tone never changed. "No," she said. "You did that all by yourself." For a moment, no one breathed. Then her gaze shifted, distant to somewhere years away. She remembered Paris. A first-class lounge, a younger version of herself, exhausted from negotiations, denied entry because your ticket must be fake. She'd stood there, humiliated, too tired to fight back, and promised herself, "Next time, I won't explain. I'll show them." The promise had matured into this silence, into this power. Back in the present, Amara stepped closer to Margaret until the space between them was smaller than pride. "You wanted me out of this seat," she said quietly. "Now you're about to lose yours." The speaker on her phone buzzed again. Carla's voice. "Ma'am, confirmation received. Security footage backed up. Press standing by if needed." Amara nodded once. "Thank you, Carla. Proceed." Then she looked back at the trembling manager, the guards, the woman who still refused to understand. "This isn't about a seat," she said. "It's about what people think belongs to them and what never did." And with that, the quiet became heavier than any shout. Because everyone in that room finally understood. The real storm wasn't outside. It had already arrived and it was wearing gray. The room had shifted. The arrogance that filled it minutes ago now felt like smoke after fire, thin, choking, directionless. The security guards froze where they stood. The manager fumbled for words that refused to come, and Amara Lewis, calm, centered, was no longer the target. She was the gravity holding the room in place. Carla's voice came through the phone again, crisp and unwavering. "Ma'am, do you want me to activate phase 3? Amara's gaze swept the lounge, every eye on her, every whisper silenced. "Yes," she said softly, "do it." A second later, the flat screens mounted on the marble wall flickered. For years, they'd looped corporate promos, champagne, runway lights, smiling flight crews. Now the feed changed. On screen appeared a digital dashboard stamped Lewis Aeronautics Holdings. Under it, owner Amara L. Lewis, CEO. And below that, a live camera feed of the lounge itself, their faces frozen in disbelief. The manager staggered back a step. "What? How?" Amara spoke without looking at him. "Protocol 22 enables internal monitoring for employee bias and misconduct. Every lounge, every gate, every voice that thought no one was listening." The silence that followed wasn't peace. It was exposure. Margaret's laugh came brittle, desperate. "You can't do this. You're not even—" "I'm not even what?" Amara asked quietly. Margaret's voice died mid-sentence. Amara turned the phone screen toward her, a call still open, the name Corporate Ethics Board glowing at the top. "You were saying?" Emma stood near the counter, eyes wide, torn between awe and relief. "Ma'am, I didn't know who you were." Amara looked at her, steady. "You didn't have to. You treated me like a person. That's all anyone ever needs to know." The older guard finally spoke, voice low. "We had orders from the manager." "Following orders doesn't erase choices," Amara replied. "You still had a voice. You just didn't use it until it was safe." The words hit heavier than accusation, they were reflection. Margaret's husband muttered, "We're leaving." Amara turned her head slightly. "You already did." He froze, confused. "You left the moment you believed silence would protect you," she said. The large screen behind her blinked again, now showing archived security clips from earlier that morning, Margaret pointing, the manager gesturing toward Amara, the guards approaching. each frame time-stamped and logged. Carla's voice over the phone. Feed synchronized, all audio saved. HR compliance, ready to proceed. The manager swallowed hard. Miss Lewis, please. We can handle this internally. Amara cut him off with a glance sharp enough to slice through excuses. You already did handle it. And this, she gestured to the frozen footage on the wall, is what internal looks like when no one thinks accountability's watching. Emma whispered, they'll lose their jobs. Amara's tone softened but stayed steady. Consequences aren't cruelty. They're clarity. Oh. She walked slowly back toward her seat, the same one she'd been told she didn't deserve. Margaret stared, voice small now. You planned all of this? To catch us? Amara set her laptop down, opened it, and met her eyes. No, she said. To remind people like you what respect costs when it's cheap. Outside, the jet engines deepened into a low thunder, vibrating through the glass. Inside, every face reflected the same truth. The hierarchy had flipped. Amara closed her laptop again, the sound echoing like a final verdict. Phase 3 complete, Carla confirmed. Amara rose once more, her voice calm, absolute. Now, she said, we begin the audit. And just like that, power returned to its rightful owner quietly, decisively, without ever raising its voice. For a long moment, no one breathed. The lounge that once brimmed with chatter now felt like a courtroom waiting for its verdict. Amara Lewis stood in the center, calm, composed, unshakable, while the walls replayed her humiliation frame by frame. The screens flickered again. Then a live video feed appeared, a polished conference room bathed in morning light. A panel of executives sat at a long oak table, each with the same company pin on their lapels, Lewis Aeronautics Holdings. A woman on screen spoke first. Her tone was measured, reverent. Miss Lewis, the board confirms receipt of the incident report. Would you like to proceed with immediate personnel review? The manager's mouth fell open. Board? You're... Amara didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. You called me a fraud, she said slowly, in a company I own. The line fell like a gavel. Every syllable landed heavy, final, unforgettable. Even Margaret, the woman who'd started it, all went still. Her voice caught in her throat as if the air itself refused to help her speak. The manager tried to stammer out an apology. We didn't know. That's the problem, Amara interrupted. You didn't care to. Carla's voice echoed through the phone. Boardroom feed confirmed. Legal compliance online. Amara nodded slightly. Thank you, Carla. Margaret's husband stood, face pale. We had no idea who you were. Amara turned toward him, calm and cutting. Then maybe you should treat everyone like they might matter. The guards lowered their heads. A shame. Emma stood near the counter, frozen in awe, the weight of realization pressing tears behind her eyes. On the big screen, one of the board members, a tall man with silver hair, leaned toward the camera. Miss Lewis, how would you like to proceed with disciplinary action? Amara's gaze didn't leave the people in front of her. The same way they treated me, she said softly, directly, publicly, without shouting. The manager's voice trembled. Please, Miss Lewis, I've worked here 12 years. Then you've had 12 years to know better, she replied. Margaret shook her head in disbelief. You came here dressed like that on purpose just to test us? Amara met her eyes. No, I came here as myself. You failed your own test. Her phone buzzed once Carla again. All systems ready. Credentials verification in sync. Good, Amara said. Initiate. On the monitors, red notifications blinked beside several names. Gregory Haynes, lounge manager. Margaret Reed, guest account suspended. Access, revoked. Their ID cards vibrated with a sharp beep. One by one, their privileges evaporated before their eyes. Margaret's voice rose in panic. Wait, you can't. I can, Amara said. Because when you built your comfort on disrespect, you built it on sand. The lights dimmed slightly as the system logged each action. Emma's voice broke the silence. Miss Lewis, are you always this calm? Amara smiled faintly, a kind of peace only power and pain could forge together. I learned a long time ago that anger burns fast, she said, but dignity endures longer. The boardroom feed closed with a chime. A new message appeared on the screen. Action completed, personnel terminated. Gasps rippled through the lounge. The people who had sneered moments ago now couldn't meet her eyes. Amara exhaled softly, like someone finally setting down a weight she'd carried too long. Then, almost as an afterthought, she looked toward Margaret and said, "You told me to move, so I did. Upward." And for the first time, the room understood the meaning of quiet power, the kind that doesn't need to shout to make the world listen. The room broke, not in noise, but in silence. The kind of silence that follows when every lie, every excuse, every ounce of false power evaporates at once. The monitors above still glowed with the red warning, "Access revoked." Margaret's bracelet clinked against her wrist as she fumbled for her phone, searching for a lifeline that no longer existed. The manager tried to swipe his ID card against the terminal beep. Denied. Again, beep. Denied. The color drained from his face like ink washing off glass. Amara stood there, unmoving. Her calm was no longer defensive, it was absolute. She didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She simply watched them unravel. "Miss Lewis, please," the manager begged. "My family, my job." Amara turned toward him, her tone even. "When you decided who belonged here, did you think about their families?" He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Outside the glass, the jet engines roared louder, a low thunder rolling over the runway. The sound felt prophetic, like justice in motion. Emma stepped forward, voice trembling. They really lost everything?" Amara nodded once. "The system removes access instantly. Contracts voided. Records archived." Her gaze softened when she looked at the young attendant. "Don't look at it as revenge. Look at it as correction." Margaret's husband muttered, "You're ruining lives." Amara turned slowly toward him. "No," she said. "I'm showing consequences. They did the ruining long before I arrived." The woman's pearls glinted under the ceiling light. Her mask of confidence cracked, revealing something raw beneath humiliation without reflection. "You think this makes you noble?" she hissed. "Humiliating us?" Amara's expression didn't change. "I didn't humiliate you," she said. "I just stopped you from doing it again." A murmur rippled through the onlookers, travelers, staff, strangers who had been silent witnesses until now. One woman near the window whispered, "She's right." Another man nodded. "It's about time someone like her owned the moment." The shift was subtle but seismic, judgment turning into respect. Emma took another cautious step closer. "What happens now?" Amara exhaled softly. "Now the investigation begins. Every complaint ignored, every guest profiled, every name buried under policy." She looked around the room, the same walls that had once been her stage of insult. "Everything this place hid will finally be seen." And Carla's voice returned through the phone, precise as ever. "Ma'am, the compliance audit has started. All recordings secure. Would you like to notify media partners?" Amara's gaze lingered on the trembling manager. "No," she said. "Not yet. Let them sit with what silence feels like when it's not on their side." Margaret turned away, blinking fast, voice small now. "You could have told us who you were." Amara's tone was almost kind. "I didn't need to. You already told me who you are." Ugh. The phrase landed heavier than a shout. It wasn't insult, it was truth. And truth, in that moment, was punishment enough. Outside, the staircase to the jet gleamed like a silver bridge, waiting for its rightful passenger. Inside, the hierarchy collapsed quietly, inevitably. Phones lowered. Eyes followed her without a word. Emma whispered, barely audible, "They'll never forget this." Amara turned toward her, that faint, knowing calm still unbroken. "That's the point," she said. "Neither will anyone watching." Then she picked up her laptop, closed it with that same deliberate click that had started everything, and walked toward the glass doors. Each step the sound of dignity reclaiming its space. Behind her, the once proud lounge now looked small, just another echo chamber dismantled by the truth it tried to hide. The automatic doors opened again, this time with reverence instead of routine. Outside, the late afternoon sun turned the runway gold. The jet waited, engines low, door open, crew standing at attention. Amara Lewis walked slowly across the polished floor, the sound of her heels precise, deliberate. Behind her, the silence followed not the silence of intimidation, but of realization. Every person in that lounge had just witnessed the kind of justice that doesn't shout. Emma stood by the counter, still gripping her tablet. "Miss Lewis," she called softly. Amara paused, turned. "Why didn't you just tell them from the start?" the young attendant asked. Her voice was small, genuine, full of the kind of innocence that still believed fairness could be explained. Amara's eyes softened. "Because truth isn't meant to be declared," she said. "It's meant to be revealed." Emma nodded, swallowing back the emotion in her throat. Amara continued, "If I told them who I was, they would have behaved out of fear, not respect. And that's not the lesson." Ugh. Behind them, Margaret sat collapsed into one of the leather chairs, her pearls crooked, mascara streaked. She whispered something no one could hear, maybe a prayer, maybe an excuse. Her husband just stared at the floor, the quiet of someone watching his world shrink to its real size. The manager stood a few steps away, badge still blinking red. "Miss Lewis," he started, voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry." Amara studied him for a long second, not angry anymore, just certain. "Apology accepted," she said, then added, "but not forgotten." The words weren't cruel. They were final. Carla's voice came through the phone one last time. "Ma'am, the jet is ready. Clearance complete." "Thank you, Carla," Amara replied. "And schedule a follow-up with HR. We'll rebuild the culture here properly." "Understood." Amara slipped her phone into her pocket and turned toward the glass doors. Emma called again, a little louder, almost pleading. "Miss Lewis, people like her, they won't change." Amara smiled faintly. "Maybe not, but everyone watching will." She nodded toward the crowd of travelers who still lingered, phones in hand, faces illuminated by the light from the runway. They'll share what they saw, and that's how change begins, not in headlines, but in moments. The glass doors slid open. Wind from the runway lifted her hoodie slightly, brushing her hair back like a signal that the scene was over. The captain at the foot of the jet staircase saluted. "Welcome aboard, Miss Lewis." She nodded, her voice low. "Sure, let's go home." Before stepping onto the stairs, she looked back one final time at the room where prejudice tried to disguise itself as policy, where silence once equaled safety. Now it was different. Now it was aware. She spoke not to anyone in particular, but to everyone who would ever watch this moment later. "I didn't raise my voice," she said softly. "I raised the standard." The engines rose to a steady roar, sunlight flaring across the glass. She ascended the staircase slow, graceful, unstoppable. When the jet door closed behind her, the world outside seemed to exhale. Emma wiped her eyes. The manager lowered his head. Margaret didn't move. And from the window, the last image was that silver jet cutting into the horizon. A symbol, a warning, a promise. Justice doesn't always make noise. Sometimes, it just takes flight. The jet cut through the clouds like a blade of light, shrinking the airport below into memory. Inside the lounge, the world that had seemed so sure of itself only minutes ago was falling apart quietly, meticulously, like a building losing its foundation one crack at a time. The manager stood at the center of the chaos he had built. Phones buzzed around him, reporters, regional supervisors, compliance officers, all demanding answers. Every question was the same. "Is it true? Did you profile the CEO of your own parent company?" His voice broke on the first answer. "Yes." Emma, still standing near the counter, watched the unraveling. For the first time, she wasn't invisible. A woman from corporate approached her, headset in place, tone sharp but respectful. "You're Emma Ruiz?" "Yes, ma'am." The woman tapped her tablet. "You've been noted for integrity under pressure. Miss Lewis requested your transfer directly to her team." Emma blinked, stunned. "Her team?" The woman smiled faintly. She said, "Some people deserve to stand closer to the light. You'll receive details by tomorrow." Across the lounge, Margaret sat frozen, her phone on the table, the screen lighting up with missed calls. Her husband whispered, "They're going to blacklist us." She didn't answer. The bravado that had once filled her voice was gone. All that remained was the echo of her own arrogance, the sound of someone who finally heard herself too late. Outside, the jet had already lifted beyond sight, but its shadow lingered over the runway. And for everyone inside the building, that shadow was a reminder. Security staff gathered their things in silence. The guards who had once stood over Amara now couldn't meet anyone's eyes. The manager muttered something about fairness, about misunderstanding, about not meaning harm, but every word sounded smaller than the last. The lounge, once a monument to exclusivity, had turned into a museum of humility. Emma walked toward the window, her reflection framed by the same glass that had reflected Amara's calm defiance. A faint smile crossed her face, not pride, not vengeance, but understanding. She whispered to herself, "She didn't just change a room. She changed the room inside everyone watching." At the far end of the terminal, the loudspeaker crackled. "Flight Lewis, 22, cleared for altitude. Estimated arrival, 40 minutes. The manager looked up, eyes red, whispering the name as if it were a confession. Lewis. Emma turned. You'll remember that name every time you decide who belongs. For once, he didn't argue. He just nodded. Outside, the golden light of evening poured through the glass, catching dust in the air, the remnants of a storm now past. But storms don't just end. They leave clearer skies, cleaner air, sharper truth. Emma glanced one last time at the door Amara had walked through. In that silence, she realized something simple, something permanent. Power wasn't loud, it was consistent. And somewhere above the clouds, on a jet worth $22 billion, a woman was quietly writing the next chapter of how dignity looks when it stops asking for permission. As the last rays hit the tarmac, Emma whispered a single sentence that felt like closure or maybe a beginning. She raised the standard and left the rest of us to catch up. Then she turned back to her post, shoulders squared, eyes forward. For the first time, the title staff didn't feel small. It felt like responsibility. At 30,000 feet, the sky looked endless. Below it, the noise of the world faded into quiet clarity, the kind only altitude and closure can give. Amara Lewis sat by the window of her jet, the horizon stretching like a promise she'd already kept. Carla stood beside her, tablet in hand, reviewing the reports. All formal terminations have been processed. HR confirms bias training will begin within 48 hours. Amara nodded, eyes still on the clouds. And the recordings? Encrypted. You own the footage outright. It's already being used for internal reform sessions. Amara smiled faintly. Good. Let them see what power looks like when it's patient. For a while, neither woman spoke. The cabin hummed, steady, serene, detached from the chaos left below. Finally, Carla asked, You didn't have to go in person. You could have sent anyone. Amara looked up, her voice calm but deep. Change doesn't happen through memos, Carla. It happens when people see what they've become. She paused, turning her gaze back to the horizon. I just held up the mirror. Carla hesitated. Do you ever get tired of fighting this? Amara's expression softened, not weary, just real. I don't fight it anymore. I expose it. There's a difference. For a moment, her mind drifted back to the girl she once was. 16 years old, standing outside a hotel lobby, holding her mother's hand. The memory played like a scene filmed in slow motion. The clerk's polite smile, the words, guests only. The quiet humiliation that burned its way into ambition. Back then, she didn't have a voice. Now, her silence was louder than any speech. Carla glanced at her. You know, that young attendant Emma Ruiz, she's joining your leadership rotation next quarter. She doesn't even know it yet. Amara allowed herself a small laugh. Good. She passed the only test that matters. Oh, what's that? Amara turned, eyes bright but calm. She saw something wrong and didn't look away. Carla smiled. You think people like Margaret will change? Amara considered it. Maybe not. But that's not the point. The point is that everyone watching will think twice before acting like her again. A chime echoed softly, the flight reaching cruising altitude. Sunlight poured through the window, spilling across the cabin in a golden wash. It caught the edge of Amara's laptop as she reopened it, typing a single line into a new document titled Leadership Notes. She wrote, Respect is not granted by position. It is measured by presence. Then she closed the lid and leaned back, content. The jet sliced forward into the sunset, a woman reclaiming space in the sky she once wasn't allowed to enter. Down below, the world would keep talking. Headlines, hashtags, opinions. But none of it mattered. Because the real victory wasn't in the punishment, it was in the proof that composure wins louder than chaos. Carla poured her a cup of tea and asked quietly, What now? Amara smiled, her eyes reflecting the burnished gold of the fading light. Now, she said, we build better rooms and make sure no one ever gets told they don't belong in them again. And with that, the jet soared higher, the sound of engines blending with her heartbeat steady, sure, unstoppable. Morning broke over Manhattan like a slow exhale, gray clouds melting into pale gold. From 30 floors up, the skyline looked calm, as if the city itself was pausing to listen. Amara Lewis stood in front of a wall of glass in her office, the same headquarters where her name, Lewis Aeronautics Holdings, shimmered across the tower in brushed steel. The footage from the private jet lounge played silently on a large screen behind her. No music, No narration, just truth on display. In the video, Margaret's voice trembled, the manager fumbled, and Amara's calm answer cut through them like light through smoke. She didn't replay it for satisfaction. She replayed it for purpose. Her executive team watched, quiet, thoughtful. When the clip ended, Amara turned to face them. "No edits," she said. "This goes in our leadership training every new hire, every manager, every partner." One of her vice presidents, an older man, cautious, polished, cleared his throat. "Won't that make people uncomfortable?" Amara's gaze was steady. "Good. Growth usually does." The room went still again. Then slowly, heads began to nod. Carla entered, tablet in hand. "The press requests an interview, ma'am. They're calling it the silence that spoke." Amara smiled faintly. "Tell them silence doesn't speak. People just finally listened." A ripple of quiet laughter broke the tension, respectful and real. She crossed to her desk, minimalist, immaculate, and placed a single photo frame upright. Inside it, a picture of a teenage Amara and her mother, standing outside that same Charlotte hotel. Her mother's hand rested on her shoulder, and her young face held both hurt and defiance. For years, she'd hidden that photo. Now, it sat in full view. Carla lingered at the door. "You think it'll stick what happened at the lounge?" Amara looked out at the city. "It already has. The ones who were there will tell the story 100 different ways. Some will twist it, some will deny it, but the truth always finds its own voice. That's legacy." She turned back, her reflection merging with the skyline black, powerful, serene. "I don't want them to remember my name," she said. "I want them to remember the standard." Carla smiled softly. "They will." Amara walked toward the elevator, her heels striking marble like punctuation marks on a statement already written. As the doors closed behind her, the lights in the boardroom dimmed automatically, leaving only the screen glowing frozen on the moment where she stood tall in that lounge, laptop in hand, the word "access" revoked flashing behind her. Below the image, a small caption faded in, part of the training module her team had prepared overnight. "Leadership isn't about speaking first, it's about standing last." Outside, traffic roared to life, but up here it was still the kind of stillness that follows a storm that changed the air itself. Somewhere on another floor, employees gathered around a break room TV, replaying the story a quiet woman in gray told she didn't belong, who revealed she owned the room. Someone whispered, "She didn't even raise her voice." Another replied, "She didn't have to." And miles above, as a new day unfolded, Amara Lewis stepped into the elevator of her own building, the one she built, the one that bore her name, and whispered to herself, more reminder than boast, "Power isn't what they give you, it's what they can't take back." The doors closed. The screen faded to black,